Let me see your papers, right now.
Excuse me. I'm a licensed pharmacist. I work here.
I don't care what you claim to be. Show me your identification and proof of citizenship.
Officer, I'm an American citizen. I was born in Houston, Texas. This is harassment.
A licensed pharmacist, Dr. Vanessa Mitchell, stood behind her counter, professional and composed. Her name tag clearly visible, her white coat crisp. In moments, she would be in handcuffs, her arms forced behind her back. This wasn't a robbery or a violent crime. This was the moment an American citizen was arrested in her own workplace for asserting a fundamental constitutional right. This was the flashpoint for a federal lawsuit that would cost the city of Phoenix millions. Officer Blake Morrison, his face flushed with anger, forced the gate to the pharmacy area open. He lunged forward, grabbing Vanessa's arm. Her voice, clear and strong, articulated the reason. She was being arrested for asserting her constitutional rights, for being a black woman in her own workplace, for refusing an unlawful order. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the silent pharmacy. Customers stood frozen, watching a uniformed officer physically subdue a healthcare professional. Morrison's body camera captured the raw, unyielding defiance in Vanessa's eyes as she was pushed toward the patrol car. From the back seat, she spoke directly into his lens. "This is racial profiling. This is a violation of my constitutional rights." Her words would become Exhibit A. How did this impossible scene unfold? It began with an anonymous phone call. A vague complaint about a suspicious black woman at Hayes Pharmacy, possibly using a stolen identity. Officer Blake Morrison had built a 7-year career in Phoenix by acting on precisely these kinds of hunches. He operated on the implicit belief that his badge granted him absolute authority. He assumed the Fourth Amendment's protections against unreasonable searches and seizures simply didn't apply to certain people, particularly those he deemed suspicious due to their appearance. Morrison had a history. 5 civilian complaints of racial profiling and constitutional violations had been filed against him. None had led to serious discipline. His supervisors praised his proactive policing, often overlooking aggressive tactics that bordered on unlawful. In his experience, people complied. They showed their papers, they didn't challenge him. But Dr. Vanessa Mitchell was different. On a bright Wednesday afternoon, Morrison arrived at Hayes Pharmacy with his partner, Officer Rachel Brennan. The Arizona sun beat down as they activated their body cameras. It was 3:07 p.m. Inside the modest strip mall pharmacy, Dr. Mitchell was explaining a prescription to an elderly patient. She was a respected professional, a woman who had dedicated 15 years to her community. Morrison walked directly to the counter. His posture was aggressive. He interrupted Vanessa mid-sentence, pointing directly at her. "I need to speak with you." Vanessa, maintaining her composure, finished with her patient, then turned to the officer. "How can I help you, officer?" Morrison's demand was immediate and stark. He stated he needed to see her identification and documentation proving her authorization to work in the country. The words hung in the air, silencing customers. Vanessa's professional courtesy gave way to confusion, then a dawning, terrible realization. She asked him to clarify. Morrison repeated the demand, his tone implying compliance was mandatory. He cited an anonymous report that someone at the location might be working under a false identity. Vanessa's hands rested on the counter. Years of handling difficult situations in a pharmacy had taught her composure. She explained she was a licensed pharmacist who worked there, gesturing to her framed credentials on the wall. Morrison dismissed them with a wave of his hand. He stated her credentials did not verify her immigration status. He then demanded government-issued identification and proof of citizenship or legal residency. What Morrison didn't realize was that Vanessa knew exactly how to dismantle his authority legally. The afternoon light illuminated the tension in her jaw. "Officer, I'm an American citizen," Vanessa stated, her voice calm but firm. "I was born in Houston, Texas. I don't have to prove my citizenship to you without probable cause. What specific crime am I being accused of committing?" Morrison's face reddened. He claimed she was not being accused of anything yet. He described it as a routine verification based on a complaint. He suggested that if she had nothing to hide, she should have no problem showing him her papers. "Papers?" Vanessa repeated, the word laced with historical weight. She reminded him this was America, not 1950s Alabama. She explained the Fourth Amendment protected her from unreasonable seizures. She asserted he had no legal authority to demand her identification unless he could articulate a specific crime. Officer Brennan shifted uncomfortably behind Morrison, her camera wavering slightly. She recognized the constitutional line being crossed. Morrison leaned against the counter. He claimed he was trying to be reasonable. He insisted she cooperate and show her ID, or they would do this the hard way. "The hard way?" Vanessa's voice rose, her composure cracking. She accused him of racial profiling. She stated he was disrupting her business based on nothing but an anonymous complaint and his own biases. The pharmacy's CCTV system captured every angle. Morrison glanced at the ceiling-mounted cameras. He insisted she cooperate. "They're recording everything," Vanessa countered, gesturing toward the cameras. "Just like your body cameras are. What it's recording is you disrupting my business based on nothing but bias." Morrison straightened, his shadow falling across the counter. He issued a final warning: show identification and proof of citizenship, or she would be detained. "Detained for what?" Vanessa demanded, gripping the counter. "You can't detain someone without reasonable suspicion. That's basic Fourth Amendment law, officer. Or did they skip that day at the academy?" Morrison's face turned crimson. He moved toward the gate leading behind the counter. He declared he was coming back there and would verify her identity himself. "You absolutely are not," Vanessa said, moving to block the gate. "This is a restricted area. You have no warrant, no consent. You're violating multiple laws." She placed her hand on the latch, holding it closed. She reiterated she was not resisting, but exercising her Fourth Amendment right. She demanded a supervisor who understood constitutional law. "That's it," Morrison said, pulling out his handcuffs. "You're under arrest." The confrontation escalated dramatically. Morrison forced the gate open, pushing past Vanessa. She stumbled backward, hands up defensively. He grabbed her arm, snapping the cuffs around her wrists. He stated she was under arrest for obstruction and failure to provide identification. "This is illegal," Vanessa protested, her voice shaking with fear and fury. She identified herself as a United States citizen born in Houston, Texas. She declared he had no right to do this. Morrison spun her around. The metallic click of the handcuffs was clear on the audio. "Officer Brennan, check her purse for identification," Morrison commanded. Brennan hesitated. She quietly noted they lacked consent or a warrant. Morrison insisted they had the right to search her belongings incident to arrest. Brennan slowly retrieved Vanessa's purse. Her camera captured the contents: wallet, keys, a stethoscope. Nothing suspicious. She opened the wallet. Her camera recorded a Texas driver's license with Vanessa's photo. Vanessa Lynn Mitchell, Houston, Texas. DOB March 15th, 1986. A U.S. passport card, a Social Security card, a DEA registration. Every document expected from a legitimate professional. "She's got a Texas driver's license and a passport card," Brennan said quietly. Her voice captured on both cameras. "She's American, born in Houston, like she said." Morrison's grip tightened on Vanessa's arm. For a fleeting moment, doubt flickered across his face. He had arrested an American citizen in her workplace for refusing to show papers she had no legal obligation to show. The realization was beginning to sink in. "Process her anyway," he said, his voice defensive. "She obstructed the investigation." "What investigation?" Vanessa challenged, her voice clear despite the handcuffs. "You just admitted I'm American. This entire stop was unlawful. You violated my Fourth Amendment rights, and now you're doubling down with a false arrest." Morrison led Vanessa through the pharmacy past shocked customers. The entrance camera recorded their exit at 3:24 p.m., just 17 minutes after Morrison had first arrived. The heat was stifling as he pushed her into the back of the patrol car. Vanessa took a deep breath. She looked directly into Morrison's body camera. She stated her full name, confirmed her identity as a licensed pharmacist and U.S. citizen born in Houston, Texas. She then accused Officer Blake Morrison, badge number 4729, of entering her workplace, demanding papers without probable cause, and arresting her for asserting her Fourth Amendment rights. She called it racial profiling, a stark example of how Black Americans are treated as suspicious simply for existing in their own country. Every word was captured, time-stamped, geotagged. It would form the core of the federal lawsuit. Brennan climbed into the passenger seat. "Blake," she whispered, her voice barely audible but captured by the microphones. "This is bad. She's right. We didn't have reasonable suspicion. The stop was unconstitutional. This is going to be a problem." "Drive," Morrison said, his voice tight. The journey to the precinct took 30 minutes. Vanessa sat silently in the back, sweat soaking her white coat. At the station, they processed her for obstruction of justice and failure to provide identification. The booking officer's eyebrows shot up. He questioned arresting a pharmacist for not showing ID at her workplace where her license was displayed. She obstructed an investigation," Morrison repeated, his pen pausing over the report. "What investigation?" the booking officer pressed. He asked what evidence Morrison observed that supported the complaint and whether he had reasonable suspicion to demand ID. Morrison hesitated. He claimed the anonymous complaint gave them reasonable suspicion. His voice lacked conviction. "An anonymous complaint with no specifics doesn't create reasonable suspicion," the booking officer stated flatly. He reminded them they had been sued over this before. He looked at Brennan. "You know this is going to be a problem, right?" Brennan nodded quietly. "I know." They processed Vanessa anyway. Fingerprints, photos, a mugshot. Her spotless professional record was confirmed. 0 arrests, 0 warrants. She was exactly who she claimed to be. Vanessa was led to a holding cell, her white coat wrinkled, her professional demeanor still intact despite the humiliation. She walked with her shoulders straight, not looking back at Morrison. She was held for 7 hours before being released. The charges remained: obstruction and failure to provide identification during a lawful investigation. Her mugshot was in the system, her reputation potentially damaged. But Dr. Vanessa Mitchell was not intimidated. 5 days later, she walked into the offices of the American Civil Liberties Union of Arizona. Her story, corroborated by the body camera footage and the pharmacy's comprehensive CCTV system, would expose a systemic failure and ignite a fight for justice that reshaped policing in Phoenix. Vanessa Mitchell refused to let the illegal arrest define her. 5 days after her release from the precinct holding cell, she walked into the offices of the American Civil Liberties Union of Arizona. There, she met David Ramos, a civil rights attorney with 2 decades of experience. Ramos listened intently, a growing anger evident in his posture as Vanessa recounted every detail. When she finished, Ramos leaned forward. He asked if she understood her Fourth Amendment rights. Vanessa, a licensed professional, affirmed her understanding. She explained that a stop requiring identification was a legal seizure. Such a seizure required, at minimum, reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. An anonymous tip without specific facts could not create that suspicion. Officer Morrison's actions, she stated, were textbook unconstitutional. Ramos agreed without hesitation. He explained that her arrest, following her assertion of rights, constituted retaliation and a deprivation of rights under color of law. Given the circumstances, he noted, it was also a clear case of racial discrimination. What Morrison didn't realize when he snapped the handcuffs was that his every move was being meticulously documented. Ramos moved quickly. He immediately requested the body camera footage from the Phoenix Police Department under Arizona's public records law. Simultaneously, he contacted Hayes Pharmacy. The pharmacy owner provided a complete copy of their security system's CCTV footage. 3 weeks later, the evidence arrived. Ramos had everything. Both officers' complete body camera recordings. From their arrival at the pharmacy through the booking process, plus all 3 angles from the pharmacy's security cameras. He watched every second. The footage was devastating. The body cameras captured Morrison's aggressive demeanor and Vanessa's calm, articulate responses. But the CCTV system provided perspectives the body cameras couldn't. It offered wide angles of the entire store layout. Overhead views showed Morrison's aggressive entry into the restricted pharmacy area. Clear footage captured the shock and fear on customers' faces. Crucially, ceiling-mounted microphones provided unobstructed audio of every word spoken. The combined footage laid bare the anatomy of Morrison's deceit. It showed Vanessa calmly citing her Fourth Amendment rights, explaining precisely why Morrison's demands were unlawful. It showed her offering to have him speak with her supervisor or the pharmacy owner if he had legitimate concerns. The cameras captured Morrison's aggressive escalation and his unlawful entry into a restricted area. It documented his retaliatory arrest. Brennan's clear reluctance was evident, as was her quiet admission that they lacked reasonable suspicion. These multiple angles revealed subtle but critical details. Morrison glanced at the security cameras, yet proceeded with his unlawful actions. The overhead view proved Vanessa never physically resisted or obstructed. Then, there was Vanessa's powerful statement from the back of the patrol car. Her clear, dignified articulation of her rights and the injustice inflicted upon her. The evidence was overwhelming. It painted a picture of an officer acting not on law, but on prejudice. Within 6 weeks of her arrest, the criminal charges against Vanessa Mitchell were dropped. The prosecutor, after reviewing the body camera footage and the pharmacy's CCTV recordings, declined to pursue the case. In her official dismissal memo, the prosecutor explicitly stated that Vanessa had correctly and repeatedly cited her Fourth Amendment rights. Officer Morrison, the memo concluded, had no reasonable suspicion to demand identification, and Vanessa had no legal obligation to provide it. Her refusal was lawful. The memo further highlighted that multiple camera angles confirmed Vanessa never physically resisted. The arrest, the prosecutor wrote, appeared retaliatory and potentially motivated by racial bias. The charges were dismissed, but that wasn't enough, not remotely. This was not just about Vanessa's freedom, but about justice. The prosecutor's office recommended the matter be referred to Internal Affairs for investigation of the arresting officer. This was a significant step, signaling official recognition of wrongdoing. But Ramos knew that Internal Affairs investigations often lack the teeth necessary for true accountability. The city's initial response to Vanessa's legal team was insulting. They offered a mere $25,000 to settle. This sum was barely enough to cover Vanessa's attorney fees, let alone compensate her for the profound violation and public humiliation she endured. Ramos refused the offer immediately. This case, he told Vanessa during a strategy meeting, was going to trial. They had everything they needed: the body camera footage, the pharmacy security system footage, Vanessa's clear understanding of the law, and Morrison's post-arrest admission that she was American. This case was about proving that being black in America did not mean forfeiting Fourth Amendment rights. It was about establishing real consequences for constitutional violations. It was a fight to ensure police could not demand papers from people based on the color of their skin. This was where the real battle began. The city of Phoenix believed its offer of $25,000 would make Dr. Vanessa Mitchell disappear. They miscalculated. David Ramos saw this not as a minor incident, but as a critical test of American constitutional values. His refusal to settle signaled a far larger fight. He prepared for trial. 21 months after Vanessa's unlawful arrest, the case of Dr. Vanessa Mitchell versus City of Phoenix, Officer Blake Morrison, and Officer Rachel Brennan began in the United States District Court for the District of Arizona. The courtroom was packed. Civil liberties advocates, members of Phoenix's black community, and pharmacy professionals filled the gallery. National media recognized the case as a defining moment in the ongoing battle against racial profiling and for constitutional rights. The first day set the tone. The jury, 12 Arizonans from diverse backgrounds, watched. They saw not one, but multiple camera angles simultaneously on split screens. First, the body camera footage, then the pharmacy's CCTV recordings. The juxtaposition was stark. They watched Officer Morrison stride into Hayes Pharmacy, bypass all customary procedure, and immediately demand papers from Vanessa. No preamble, no explanation of a specific crime, just an assumption of suspicion. They observed Vanessa's professional response, her calm citation of the Fourth Amendment, her clear articulation of why his demand was unlawful. The jurors witnessed Morrison's rapid escalation, his physical entry into the restricted pharmacy area, his aggressive, retaliatory arrest. What the split-screen view made undeniably clear was the difference between Morrison's perspective and the objective reality. The CCTV footage, particularly the overhead views, magnified Morrison's aggression. It showed Vanessa's defensive posture, not resistance. It captured the palpable shock and fear on the customers' faces throughout the store. They saw Officer Brennan's hesitation, her reluctance to search Vanessa's purse, and her eventual discovery of Vanessa's American citizenship documents. Then, they heard Vanessa's powerful statement from the back of the patrol car. Her dignity remained intact, even in handcuffs. When the footage ended, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. 3 jurors were visibly crying. Others looked angry, betrayed. How could this happen in their city? Vanessa testified for 5 hours over 2 days. She detailed her background, her education at Texas Southern University, her 15 years as a pharmacist, her dedicated service to the Phoenix community. She spoke of the profound humiliation of being arrested at work, in front of her customers and colleagues, for asserting rights that every American is supposedly guaranteed. She articulated the constant burden of proving she belonged, a burden black professionals face daily. "I have 3 pharmacy degrees hanging on my wall," she told the jury, her voice steady but deeply emotional. "I have a state license that requires background checks and continuing education. I've never been arrested. I've never committed a crime. But the moment Officer Morrison saw me, a black woman, he assumed I was there illegally." She explained that he didn't ask to speak to the owner or verify the complaint before acting. He simply walked in and demanded papers. "And when I cited the Fourth Amendment," she concluded, "when I asserted the rights that supposedly make America different, he arrested me for it. That's not policing, that's oppression." This was not merely an individual grievance, it was an indictment of a system. Ramos reinforced Vanessa's testimony with expert analysis. He called Professor William Chen from Arizona State University's Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. Professor Chen explained Fourth Amendment jurisprudence in plain, accessible language. He confirmed that the Supreme Court had long established that police may demand identification only when they have reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. An anonymous tip lacking specific, articulable facts simply did not meet this threshold. Officer Morrison had no legal basis to demand Dr. Mitchell's identification, Professor Chen testified. Her refusal was lawful. His arrest was unconstitutional. This is settled law, and any reasonable officer would know this. The defense attempted to invoke qualified immunity, arguing that Morrison could have reasonably believed his actions were lawful. On this legal shield often protects officers from liability. But Ramos was prepared. In his closing argument, Ramos systematically dismantled the qualified immunity defense. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "Dr. Mitchell told Officer Morrison he was violating the Fourth Amendment." She explained why. She cited case law principles that any first-year law student would understand. All of this is documented on multiple cameras from multiple angles. And he arrested her anyway. Not because he believed he was right, but because he was angry that a black woman dared to tell him no. Ramos concluded, "That's not a reasonable mistake. That's willful ignorance of constitutional rights." That's exactly what qualified immunity doesn't protect. The jury deliberated for 3 agonizing days. Vanessa spent them praying, surrounded by family, colleagues, and activists. Her case was seen as a litmus test. Did the Fourth Amendment truly protect all Americans equally, regardless of race? When the verdict finally came, the courtroom filled within minutes. The jury foreman, a retired school teacher, stood to read. Guilty on all counts. The room erupted in cheers and tears. Vanessa collapsed into Ramos's arms, sobbing with relief and vindication. Justice in this instance had prevailed. But the cost was still being calculated. The guilty on all counts verdict echoed through the courtroom. A thunderclap of vindication for Dr. Vanessa Mitchell. It was a victory, but the battle for full accountability was not over. Now came the damages phase, the calculation of what this injustice had truly cost. This stage would determine the tangible price of constitutional violation and the city's negligence. The damages phase lasted 2 weeks. The jury heard testimony detailing the profound impact of that single afternoon. Vanessa spoke of the panic attacks that had plagued her, the raw fear of police interactions, her months-long inability to return to work, her career, her sense of safety, her trust in the system. All were severely compromised. But the ripple effect extended beyond Vanessa. Customers loyal to Hayes Pharmacy for years testified they stopped coming. They feared association with someone arrested, even if unjustly. The pharmacy owner described lost business and reputational damage. He recounted the cost of providing the security footage that had proved Vanessa's innocence, an expense he bore for the truth. An expert psychiatrist explained the particular trauma that Black professionals experience when their credentials and expertise are rendered meaningless in the face of racial bias. This wasn't merely stress, it was a deep, systemic wound. An economist calculated Vanessa's lost wages, the damage to her career trajectory, and the financial burden of therapy and legal defense. Each testimony laid bare another layer of the cost: personal, professional, and communal. The jury returned with their verdict on damages. The courtroom exploded once more. Cheers and tears filled the space. The foreman read the numbers. $8.4 million in compensatory damages. This figure covered Vanessa's lost wages, emotional distress, reputational harm, and the direct violation of her constitutional rights. But the jury went further. They awarded an additional $7.5 million in punitive damages. This sum was not about compensation, it was about punishment. It was calculated specifically to penalize the city of Phoenix for allowing officers like Morrison to operate without adequate training, oversight, or accountability. The total, $15.9 million. This was the largest civil rights verdict in Arizona history. The city, which once offered a dismissive $25,000, now faced a staggering bill. What were the immediate repercussions of this monumental verdict? The consequences for Officer Blake Morrison were swift and severe, and he was terminated from the Phoenix Police Department within hours of the verdict. His career, built on aggressive enforcement and racial profiling, was over. Officer Rachel Brennan, who had hesitated but ultimately complied with Morrison's unlawful orders, received a 2-month suspension. She was permanently reassigned to desk duty. Her field career effectively ended. The Phoenix Police Department, facing immense public scrutiny and the threat of federal intervention, announced sweeping reforms. These were not mere cosmetic changes. They aimed at systemic overhaul. Mandatory Fourth Amendment training was instituted, with a specific emphasis on reasonable suspicion standards. New policies were enacted, explicitly prohibiting demands for identification without articulable reasonable suspicion. A body camera review protocols were established for all arrests involving constitutional challenges. Crucially, an independent monitor was appointed to review allegations of racial profiling, ensuring external oversight. Dr. Vanessa Mitchell, once an anonymous victim of police overreach, now became a national figure. She used part of her settlement to establish the Fourth Amendment Defense Fund. This fund provided free legal representation to others who suffered unlawful demands for identification. She became a powerful national voice against racial profiling. She testified before Congress, spoke at law schools, and shared her story relentlessly. The combined body camera and CCTV footage of her arrest became mandatory viewing in police academies across the country. It served as a stark, undeniable lesson in the consequences of allowing racial bias to override constitutional law. Her case also ignited broader conversations about the critical role of business security systems in documenting police interactions and protecting civil liberties. In Phoenix, Dr. Vanessa Mitchell's case became a landmark. It was proof that the Fourth Amendment was not just abstract legal text. It showed that racial profiling had real, tangible consequences. And it demonstrated that sometimes the most important and powerful thing an individual can say to unchecked authority is simply no. But even a monumental verdict leaves a lingering question. Has the systemic issue truly been resolved? The $15.9 million verdict was a landmark. It dismantled an officer's career, forced a police department to reform, and empowered a victim to become an advocate. But beneath the surface of this legal triumph lay an unsettling question. How many Vanessa Mitchells were never recorded? How many quietly suffered injustice without the irrefutable evidence of multiple camera angles? The Phoenix Police Department's reforms were sweeping, mandated under public pressure and the shadow of Department of Justice oversight. Mandatory Fourth Amendment training, clear prohibitions on demanding ID without reasonable suspicion, rigorous body camera review. These were vital changes. The appointment of an independent monitor for racial profiling allegations signaled a commitment to external accountability. Yet systemic change is a long, arduous process, often resisted from within. Dr. Vanessa Mitchell's case became required viewing in police academies. The raw footage, the chilling audio served as a stark lesson in constitutional law. It depicted precisely what happens when implicit bias and unchecked authority collide with fundamental rights. The incident also underscored the unexpected yet critical role of business security systems. Hayes Pharmacy's CCTV, initially installed for security against theft, became an essential tool for civil rights. It provided objective evidence that transcended individual perspectives, forcing accountability. But what if there had been no pharmacy CCTV? What if the body cameras had malfunctioned? Vanessa's story became a beacon. Her Fourth Amendment Defense Fund provided legal aid to countless others. She leveraged her painful experience into a powerful platform, testifying before Congress, speaking at law schools, and sharing her truth with anyone who would listen. Her voice became synonymous with resilience against racial profiling. The verdict and its aftermath delivered a powerful message. Racial profiling has consequences. Demanding papers without cause is unconstitutional. Standing up for your rights is not a crime. Yet, the systemic roots of such incidents remain deeply embedded. Officer Morrison operated for 7 years with 5 civilian complaints, none resulting in meaningful discipline. This raises a crucial question about the culture of policing itself. Were his actions an anomaly or a predictable outcome of a system that tacitly permitted or even encouraged aggressive enforcement tactics based on appearance? This case was a victory. It affirmed that in America, the Fourth Amendment means something. It showed that when confronted with clear evidence, a jury will uphold constitutional principles. But it also serves as a haunting reminder of the daily vigilance required to protect those rights. It asks us to consider the countless individuals who lack the resources, the legal knowledge, or the irrefutable video evidence that Vanessa Mitchell possessed. The truth, recorded on body cameras and security systems and vindicated in court, reminds us of a fundamental principle: we, the people, grant power to government, not the other way around. But the ongoing fight for true, equal justice suggests that this principle is still challenged daily in subtle and overt ways across the nation. Are we truly upholding this core American promise for all citizens? That question perhaps remains unsettlingly unresolved.